Hey, Nichole Huntsman, your astrologer from moderncosmic.com. In this video, we are going to do a relationship chart analysis between Brad and Angelina. So Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, the actor and actress. As I was trying to pick a celebrity couple to do the charts with, I had to find somebody who I knew I had accurate birth info. So I needed, of course, the date, the place, and the time for both partners in order to do a full relationship reading that would be accurate, interesting, where we could kind of lean into the reading and really pull some interesting things out of it. So with these two, if you would like to follow along, I actually got their charts from astro.com. So the way we will break down this reading, we're going to start first with Brad's chart. I'm actually going to do a full birth chart reading on Brad, and that will take about an hour. So just FYI, this is going to be a little series of videos. This isn't going to be a short quickie. This is actually going to be, and I'm not personally into celebrity news. I don't buy celebrity magazines. I don't watch TV really. So my understanding of this couple is pretty limited in scope. I just sort of know them from movies I've seen them in. I know that they've adopted kids from foreign countries. I know that they have some children of their own together. That's truly about all that I know about these two. So if there's information that that you can think of, that your questions you might have, you're more than welcome to ask them. But hopefully this will be enlightening, and I don't know, maybe there'll be some things that come up. We're going to do a little tiny bit of forecasting, so maybe we can see that some things that are coming up for them sort of down the road that might be of interest and of note. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. We are going to start with Brad's birth chart, and after that we will do the synastry chart. I'll take a look at Angelina's chart first, and then we'll do the synastry kind of on the second part. And the synastry is going to show the general chemistry between the two people. Synastry shows you, it's just like putting two compounds together. It's sort of what's the chemical reactions. What are we going to have here? Are we going to have an explosion? Are we going to have, are things going to start steaming? What's going to happen? It's going to be crystallizing. So that's kind of what you see at the synastry chart. After that, we'll take a look at the Davison chart. So if I was to choose between a Davison or a composite and I had a limited amount of time to work with, I would go with the Davison. So that's what we'll look at. With the Davison, we will do a full breakdown about the purpose of the relationship. We'll look at the sun, the moon, the rising, and then all of the houses of the relationship. Definitely the nodes. We're going to look at soul path, perhaps possible past lives between these two, because that's always really fun to kind of dive into. I've already looked at Brad's actually. He's an interesting south node that we will talk about when we do his birth chart reading. After that, I will do a tiny bit of forecasting, just sort of as I'm going, I'll sort of make notes of solar arcs or things that I'm seeing, whether it's progressions or transits that might be happening with either people or with the couple, the partnership in general. Okay, so let's get started with Brad's chart. Now I'm going to read this chart as though he's not a celebrity, as though we don't even know who he is. I'm just going to read it as though it came across came into my inbox, my messaging system, and it's a client that needed a recorded reading. So I'm not really going to focus on his celebrity. I'm just more interested in finding out about who this person is on a deeper level. The celebrity is just its occupation, it's his vocation, it's what he does for work. It tells us a little bit, obviously, about his soul path, but clearly there's much more to a person than their job that they do every day. Okay, so we start with the very basics. I always do it in kind of the same fashion: sun, moon, rising, and then the houses. Keep it simple. I always think that's best. We've got with Brad, we've got his sun in Sagittarius. So in the first house, someone who's got their sun in Sagittarius, it's the thing about, it gives them a naturalness. It gives them an openness. It's like, whenever I think of Sagittarius, I think of someone who's kind of quick and easy to laugh or easy to smile. There's this sort of generosity with Sagittarius, and there's a sparkle and little twinkle in their eye, opposite of Gemini. They have that kind of a little impish. They can be a little impish in a sense, but there's an authenticity with Sag. And Sagittarius sun, your sun is, that's your sort of your ego. It's your life force. I always say, if we're painting a painting, it's the canvas that we're painting this painting upon. Sun in the first house is the Aries house. So this tells us that this person's experience of the world around him is one where he's got a bit of dominance in a sense, or his identity is very much up to him. Actually, I've had quite a few experiences of people with sun in the first house, and they're the type of people where they just a lot of times their ego, their confidence comes very naturally. It's like, we are lighting up that first house of the self, and they just naturally have a charisma to them. They naturally have an ability to, and they could be on the shadow side a little bit egotistical, but because he's Sagittarius, it would almost be like I can see him making fun of himself. That's kind of more of a Sag, I can see him getting a little inflated and then making fun of himself. That would be how Sag would play that off. But mainly having your sun in the first house suggests you can do with your life what it is you please. So it's sort of up to him to choose what it is he wants to do with his life. Sagittarius also gives, and Aries, this combination gives an athleticism. These two fire signs are both quite masculine. His Sagittarius sun is ruled by Jupiter, which falls into his fourth house. That's his house it's actually the Cancer house. It's the house of home. It's an interesting placement for a Jupiter. And it says that with females and with the mother, I actually have no idea what his relationship is like with his mother, but with Jupiter down in the fourth house, it would suggest there's a benefic relationship with the mother, and one where he was supported by the mother and vice versa, where he supports the mother, and the idea of the archetype of the mother, being someone who has a desire to see people nurturing other people and to support them in that role. Okay. Now, also in his first house, we've got Mars in there. It's loosely, it's like 15 degrees from his sun. We're not going to talk about that right now. Let's look at his moon. He's got a moon in Capricorn at 22 degrees in the second house, the Taurus house, and it's conjunct his Venus. And so without even knowing anything about what this person looks like, obviously we know Brad Pitt's very handsome, but Venus conjunct moon in general, regardless of the zodiac sign, gives a tenderness and an affectionate quality to the personality. Now, we place this in Capricorn. Capricorn is earthy. Capricorn is the father. Capricorn is somebody who would desire to create, with Venus and Moon there, there is a desire to create some structure, okay? Someone with their Venus in Capricorn, they value, because Venus is what you value, they value, and in the second house, the Taurus house, they're going to value on several levels, building material security. Okay, so your moon in the second house just says you're someone who wants to feel emotionally secure through, and what you'll typically do is through being ambitious, through whether it's, I would actually think this is the chart of someone who is in business. Frankly, this feels more to me, he's got a South Node in Capricorn as well in the first house. I wonder if he had like a past life, a military past life where he was a leader in the military. But this chart feels more like someone who has just kind of an everyday job, maybe runs his own business, perhaps an entrepreneur doing their own kind of his own thing, but very much interested in saving money, very much interested in creating for his family and for himself a grounded, solid, secure base. That's Moon in Capricorn in the second house. Conjunct Venus. Venus adds an element of, well, first of all, Venus appreciates in Capricorn, appreciates, material security, appreciates nice things, like the finer things, but it's very practical. So as far as what he would appreciate aesthetically, it would be something like form follows function. So it would be, his aesthetic is going to be, even though it's Sagittarius, which is very natural and kind of, I'm not over the top, but just Sagittarius is just, they don't really care much about aesthetics. Having a Venus in Capricorn is much more discerning, and it is design oriented. It is form follows function. Okay. And those things will sort of speak to him. And I only mention that because it's in the second house of this is a house of possessions. Now that Venus conjunct the Moon in Capricorn also, let's talk about the rulers. It's Saturn, and Saturn for him is also in the second house, but it's in Aquarius. And so having Saturn in Aquarius this is more visionary. And while he's got this Capricorn Moon, Capricorn Mercury, Capricorn South Node, Mars, South Node, Mercury, Moon, Venus, all in Capricorn, right? But they're ruled by a Saturn in Aquarius. Capricorn is the status quo. Capricorn is tradition. Capricorn is how it's always been done. Aquarius, not so much. Aquarius is the rebel. So it's a Saturn in Aquarius, though. So he's interested in creating, looking at how things have been done in the past and totally reinventing them. It's very visionary, but it'll be done in such a way, it's like he'll remember. It's not like he would go willy-nilly towards sort of reinventing something. He's going to do it in a way that's very meticulous and systematized You know, he's going to take his time, plan something out. He's going to really appreciate planning things, but it's always with this sort of vision towards the future. This vision towards, I'm going to plan it, but it's got to be the way I want to do it. You know, there's this individualist, rugged individualist is actually what I'm, would be a great word for somebody with this Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius thing happening. And a bit stubborn. His moon conjunct Venus and his Mercury, his mind, and Saturn, all in the second house. This is a Taurus house. So it does give this Taurus commitment. It gives fixedness. It makes him, even though he's a Sagittarius, Sun and his Mars is in that first house, but it's in Capricorn, which can give him this fiery, independent, you know, needing to do his own thing, very masculine, you know, needing to have his own purpose. He's also got three very important planets, his mind, his heart, what he values in the second house, and Saturn, which is commitment. He's very, very committed, and even can get stuck. Even can be so committed he could even get sort of into routine where he feels a little bit like, you know, feeling stuck with his life and feeling like, and he's got Pluto right now, transiting Pluto, coming to hit his Mercury, and like next year, the year thereafter, his moon and his Venus. So he's up for a lot of really big changes over the course of this next few years relative to perhaps he may go into politics or something. I don't know. His mind, sort of his mindset's going to be changing, his attitude towards money. His moon and his Venus, he could step into some roles that are more perhaps artistic, or, you know, it's just sort of a departure from what perhaps he has been doing. His moon and his moon rules his 8th house, actually. Mercury rules the 7th house. His marital relationship may actually, I know people have been talking about these two, oh, they're going to get divorced. They've been saying that for years. And that's the little I know from tabloids. It's just what you see when you're at the checkout stand. I just barely saw him the other day. Divorce papers ripped up, you know. And but he does have Pluto coming to transit the ruler of his 7th house, which is his house of partnership. And also, it will then, the following year, transit his moon and his Venus, which, you know, his moon rules his 8th house, which is the house of your sexual partner. It's also joint resources you hold with someone else, and his North Node, which is kind of his life path. So he'll be making some big changes relative to his relationship. I do know that Angelina had cancer at one point. So when I'm seeing, this is without looking at anything else, I'm hoping it's not that she'll go into, I guess she didn't have cancer, but she just had her breasts removed and her ovaries removed or something, right? I'm sorry, maybe I do know a little more about them than I thought. I remember reading that or hearing that somewhere. And so this may be something relative to his wife. It could be her health. It could be the marriage itself. As we go through the chart, we'll see more as we see solar arcs and whatnot. I'm kind of looking right now. Okay, so not to digress. Now let's talk about the aspects being made. Now, what's interesting is his 25-degree Sagittarius Sun. It doesn't take any aspects from anything well, it does take a square from his MC and a square from his IC. So MC, that's your career, and IC is your home life, so it's kind of the work-home balance. There's, you know, making a T-square where his Sun in the first house is sort of holding these two things together. To me, that feels very, it feels like the home-work balance is one where he finds his identity. You know, being not only someone that's got a career path that's healthy and ambitious, but also at the same time that his home life is something he's actively involved in. And he's got Saturn coming also this next year to conjoin his Sun. So, you know, that's going to be squaring that axis of work and home. Maybe kind of a year where he gets a little bit more serious about what it is he's here to do with his life. I can see him perhaps stepping into something that's taking more of a leadership role when it comes to the entertainment industry. Maybe he's going to work on some screenplays, got Pluto conjoining Mercury. Maybe he's going to do more producing or directing roles, things like that, taking more leadership roles. And yeah, so, okay, let's talk about the fact, so that Sun, because it doesn't, other than, you know, it makes the context to career and home. If his career life or his home life, if either thing is not going well, it's really going to affect his sense of well-being. It's really going to affect his identity. He is going to be somewhere, if let's say his career is going great, but he didn't have a home life, or vice versa, if his home life is going great, but his career was non-existent, either of those situations, he would feel quite lost. As a Sagittarius, as a mutable sign, they really, really need to have either, whether it's a a job, in their life, or people in their life that they're working with. All the mutable signs have to kind of, how would you say it? I almost think of it as like a lock and a key, like their key missing their lock. So if he didn't have career and he didn't have home, he would just be sort of purposeless. That's for this particular Sagittarius sun. The progressed moon right now also is moving right now into position to conjoin with his sun, which that's usually a period of time in your life where it's kind of a bit of he may be having a bit of a new start, and through the first house as well. So sort of re-identifying himself, like kind of retooling his identity right now, figuring out what it is he wants to do with his life. The acting may not be, frankly, when I look at this chart, I don't necessarily think of this as being someone who's an actor. I think because he's got a pretty strong first house and he sticks to something, I think that's how he got into acting. I think it's like there's ambition with Capricorn for sure. And in the second house, that's a Taurus house, and it has to do with beauty and artistry. But it's also much more serious than acting, so to speak. And I think he just got into it, and with that Taurus fixedness, he just stayed. And I think if you were to ask him, I don't necessarily think acting, I think it was a vehicle for him to do something much bigger with his life, especially if you consider the fact that stellium of Capricorn runs up into his ninth house, to connect with his Pluto and Uranus, that generational stellium in Virgo, which, let's talk about this. Pluto, Uranus. Pluto is transformation. Uranus has to do with also freeing and generationally, like as a people, as a person, as part of his culture, as part of his generation. His generation had a desire to sort of break the mold, so to speak. Okay, and in Virgo, that is the zodiac sign that has to do with service. In the ninth house is wisdom. It's the Sagittarius house. Wisdom, learning, foreign countries, foreign travel. It makes me think of, the professor. So to me, if anything, acting, he initially got into it because he's handsome. He's got a strong first house, very masculine. And he's got that sun or that moon conjunct Venus, which gives him that charm and charisma and the sweetness. But really his bigger goal is to be sharing a message and to be telling a story. That's going to be the bigger, more fulfilling side of acting for him. And even on the higher side, I would say he's way more built to be on the design end of things. Like he should be the one that's either writing the screenplay or that's to being the visionary, that's saying, okay, this is the project I want to work on. These are the people I want to work with, and then sort of delegating and hiring everybody out. That's what this chart is for, much more than for the acting side. Okay, so the acting is here. It's just not using the entire chart, okay? Interestingly enough, he has Neptune in the 11th house. 11th house is the collective. Neptune is glamour. So people see him as glamorous. It's kind of, he had that ability through the collective, through the audience, to be this vessel that people project upon. And so, that's right there in the chart. So I digress, as usual. This is just typically how I read a chart. I'm just all over the place, even though I try to stick with my pattern. Okay, so let's talk about his rising sign really quickly, and then we'll come back to his moon. His rising sign is in Sagittarius. So his chart ruler is his Jupiter in the 4th house, and it's in Aries. Jupiter is expansive. Anyone whose chart ruler is Jupiter, anyone who's got Sagittarius rising, Sagittarius sun, Sagittarius moon, as I said, there's this smile that spreads across their face, where there's this laughter to them. There's just this enthusiasm. There's this thing about them that's charming, and you can't resist them. That's just Sagittarius for you. And with his chart ruler being that Jupiter in Aries, it gives it this masculine, athletic warrior thing, right? And it's squaring, Jupiter squares his Mars, which is, hello, you know what I'm saying? Very nice. It's enlarging his manhood. So it's very masculine, let's just say, okay? Muscular, athletic, and so on and so forth. In his 4th house is also this is the house of the woman and the mother. And so there's something that he carries in his sort of presence, I suppose. There's this thing about him where it feels like he would protect home, he would protect people he loves, which is obviously also very masculine and very attractive. Plus with all this Capricorn, that's the father. He has this very strong, the father, the leader, the stoic, the one you can sort of lean on and rely on, the one that's going to have the practical answers. And even because it's ruled by that Saturn in Aquarius, they'll be a little bit sort of visionary and maybe a little bit outside the box thinking, but they're still ultimately going to be like practical, you know? Okay, now let's, what we're going to do now, we're going to look at the aspects of the moon, then we'll move through the houses. Moon at 22 degrees of Capricorn, it makes a trine, albeit fairly loose, to Pluto. And actually Pluto, his MC, I don't know the exact without like, I'd have to sit here and I'm not good at doing quick mathematics in my head, but I'm going to say that his moon, Venus, makes a nice trine to the midpoint between his MC and his Pluto and his MC. So this is his ability to be powerful through what he does for work and for career. And it's ambition, okay? It's ambitious. There's a desire for a higher purpose to do something important with your life. There's a sense emotionally that you have a mission to fulfill. And it's in the 9th house, though. It's in Virgo. That's service. That is the house of I'm here to be a servant of some kind, of a higher, for like a higher calling. And it's where all this easy flow of energy comes. It's very powerful. It's Pluto. So Pluto's very focused, and Pluto is obsessive, and Pluto's compulsive, and it's making connections down into earthy Capricorn stellium with a bunch of it in the 2nd house, which is Taurus, which is it's a train on its rails. It's very hard to stop it. Once it's an object in motion, remains in motion kind of thing. So once he started with his career, it was kind of like it got going, it caught momentum, and it would have been very difficult for him to stop it. I mean, it was kind of like, in a sense, he was fated or destined to be someone successful with what he did for work. Even if, as I said, even if he didn't do something in entertainment, let's say he decided to start his own business and was in, it could be whatever business, something creative perhaps because of this Venus, conjunct the moon in the 2nd house. Could be something creative, but something practical as well. He would have started, he probably would have been very successful at it and done it until he, was an older gentleman. Okay, now with his moon, also we've got, okay, no, that's actually to his Mars, I'm sorry. So yeah, that's the only stuff with the moon. Moon conjunct Venus makes that contact to his MC for career. So emotionally, he, that ambition, that desire to set a course, to chart a course, and to be dedicated to it is there. Let's move on. Let's go through his houses. So, first house. This is the house of, on a very surface level, it's your physical body. It is your identity. If we were to talk about sort of the hero's journey, this is the beginning. This is the protagonist. You have a body. You have an ego. If you believe in past lives, it's sort of the culture you're born into, or it's kind of just you are that naked screaming baby in the delivery room. Here you go. Let's do this. Okay, that's first house. His sun is there. So sun in the first house is one where it's kind of like, well, it gives you confidence. It gives you the ability to kind of do what you want to do with your life. There's charisma, there's sparkle with sun in the first house. And in Sagittarius, it gives an optimism, it gives a buoyancy, it gives a person the ability to kind of bounce back from tough things. Physically, it gives an athleticism and a naturalness to your look. He would present the best if he showed up sort of just looking like he just came. I think, okay, so actually think of him in, what was it, A River Runs Through It, in that movie, sort of. Or was that the one where, not the one, is that the one where he had the long hair? Because he did look pretty hot in that one, I will say. But it was maybe the other one that was kind of set in the West. At any rate, when he's natural, just kind of in, like it looks like he just came from a hunting trip or something, or he just came from fly fishing, he looks really handsome. And it's almost kind of traditional. You got Capricorn in there as well, so it's very masculine. Like if you think of that movie, River Runs Through It, there, even though I think he's Tristan in that movie, right? So he's kind of the wild child, but he's even dressed still though. He's got like a vest on. That's Capricorn, right? It's formal, it's traditional, but yeah, he's kind of the wild child with the long hair, and he looked gorgeous in that movie. See. That would be a great use of Sun, Mars, this first house of his. Okay, now I don't usually spend too much time on the first house. I will say though, his South Node is here. So South Node is in Capricorn. That immediately tells you his the past life that's sort of informing this one, or the themes he's bringing forward, are ones where he's been in roles of leadership. He's been a leader, and almost like a rebel leader in a sense too, ruled by that Saturn in Aquarius. And that South Node is conjunct Mars in Capricorn. That is like a classic. You had a past life, if it wasn't directly military, related to the military, it was something where, you know, you were part of the masses, so to speak. You were leading the masses because it's, you know, a Saturn in Aquarius. You were leading people to fight the system. You know, that's what this chart is. And that South Node of his at 11 degrees, that makes a trine to his Pluto in Virgo in the 9th house. And so that past life is actually something that informs his sort of higher purpose, his sense of mission he has in this life, that he's supposed to be doing something much bigger than entertainment. The entertainment is just a platform. It's just an earthly, just a way to get the attention of the masses. It's your pulpit or your, it's your pulpit or your platform, your stage. In his second house is the house that has to do with your, initially it's this understanding that we possess our body, we possess our, you know, babies learn that, oh, my hands are mine, I'm separate from the mother, you know, this measuring tape. Don't ask why I have a measuring tape in here, maybe I like to measure things. This measuring tape is mine, you know. Or it's one of my kids who's taken it and put it somewhere where I can't find it. There's that too. That's the second house though. And so it covers our money as well. It's our money, it's our values, it is our talents, because our talents are ours. You know, the person can't take your talents from you. And he's got a nice loaded second house, which tells us he came here with some gifts in that area, understanding his talents. His Mercury is there, it's in Capricorn. So Mercury in Capricorn is one that is, all the earth signs, when it comes to Mercury, they think and they communicate more slowly and more practically. They're very pragmatic, okay? That is definitely Mercury in Capricorn. Even if you've got someone who is there can also be a really interesting sort of stilted formality to the way someone with a Mercury in Capricorn will communicate. Almost like an old-fashioned formality to their communication style, or this desire to say things in a way that's the right way, okay? In the second house, it is very much, let's focus on the concrete details here. Like, let's figure out how to make this happen rather than just be pie in the sky. They want to just plan something and then they want to do it. His Mars in the first house in Capricorn is very, I didn't even really touch on this Mars very much. Mars in Capricorn, Mars loves to be in Capricorn. When I see Mars in Capricorn, that's the general. To me, in my mind, that's the general. That is someone who they're going to plan something and they're going to do it. And they're dutiful, they show up, they're passionate, they don't finish until it's done. They have great endurance, stamina. You're welcome, Angelina. They're just hardworking, very hardworking. My best girlfriend has this actually. And oh no, it's her Venus, I'm sorry, her Mars is in Virgo. But Capricorn is just, they're hardworking. They stick to it until the job is done. And so I'm sure just on set, I'm sure he'd be the kind that would be very professional. He would show up prepared. He wouldn't be known as being someone who was like ill prepared, or by the way, he does have a Mars trine Uranus exactly. It's in that 9th house. So this is probably how this will happen. Mars in Capricorn, trine Uranus in the 9th house. He'll show up on set prepared, totally prepared, professional, ready to go because he's Mars in Capricorn, but he'll also have ideas. He'll have these sort of, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? Sort of that visionary quality applied to his Mars. So he'd probably be a real joy to work with. Uranus in the 9th house is expansive and it's like open to trying new things, but not married to anything. That's very Sagittarius as well. So seriously, I mean, granted, it's Brad Pitt, who's a total babe, but just like looking at this chart, I think he probably is a really cool person too, just like a really down-to-earth, quite grounded, open, expansive human being, and generous and kind. So yeah, very nice. Okay, but back to the second house. With Mercury, his Mercury is at 16 degrees of Capricorn, and that Mercury takes a little trine, it trines Pluto. So that adds intensity to the way that he thinks. If he's focused on something, he's studying something, he's going to, again, a highly focused person, highly even, could be to the point of, I wouldn't go so far as to say compulsive because this is Capricorn we're dealing with, but it is not stopping until it's done. It's like even going until it's like, until it dies kind of a thing. It's very, very, very focused and very high level of endurance to this person's. It's kind of his underbelly too. It's like inside of him. On the outside, he wouldn't come off as staid or stoic, really. He'd come off as this first house, which is very charismatic and fiery and open and laughter and friendly, but underneath it's very focused and extremely committed, almost to the point of being definitely a workaholic. But it's what he enjoys. He would really enjoy working. He would enjoy also sort of the idea of collaborating as well, something that would be really exciting for this birth chart. I'm very curious to see what happens for him over the course of this next year. So I pretty much guarantee he's going to be doing something where he collaborates with someone else. Perhaps he and Angelina do something together. That could be a good use of this Pluto conjunct the Mercury, which rules the 7th house, which is marriage, but it's also partnership. And this is kind of, it will then thereafter hit his moon, which is his wife, and Venus, which is his creativity. So I can kind of see him and his wife perhaps collaborating and doing something together. And it's also going to the 2nd house, which is that house of money. So, doing something together where, I don't know what it's going to be exactly. I don't know if it's something more to do with 9th house things, which is the world around them. Perhaps they put together like a Kiva fund to help people get microloans, or they do something that's, this is definitely kind of more, it's creative, but like perhaps more humanitarian than something that's, maybe it's a documentary that they're going to do together. Maybe they're going to do a documentary about, actually, it's even possible, the economy or sort of energy, because energy and our economy are very tightly, they're, interwoven. So perhaps they're going to do some sort of project together that explains, a documentary that helps to explain the issues in the world around us and why we're at where we're at right now economically, and the disparity between the first world and third world countries and things like that. That would be actually a really fantastic use of this upcoming transit. Really, really fantastic, actually. Okay, 3rd house, and by the way, he does have Saturn in his 2nd house, so Saturn just adds that element of, it's an element where you're going to focus your attention, your responsibility, your adultness. You're going to adult with your Saturn because it rules his stellium in Capricorn. It's his ambition. It says, he's going to work hard for the money and for the resources he earns. And it squares his Neptune up in the 11th house. It's like comes from entertainment, but it looks he has a square. It's a burden for him. The acting thing, while he might enjoy the actual process of creating a film, he does not enjoy celebrity. This is someone who, that Saturn squaring Neptune, to me, that's like, it's a burden, it's a weight, that persona, that projection, that he has to be a vessel for this vast collective is a heavy burden and a weight, and not something he enjoys, but it also is something that pays him. It's where his income comes from. Okay, 3rd house. 3rd house is the house of communication, and this is how his mind operates. We've got Aquarius on the cusp. We also have a little Pisces in here. So the traditional ruler of his 3rd house would be Saturn, which is in his 2nd house. And the modern ruler is Uranus up in the 9th house. So this is like this practical application of, how do I, first and foremost, how can I make money from teaching people? There is that element to it. But also, what do I value? What do I care about? What do I take seriously enough that it's something that's a wound that needs to be communicated? In the 3rd house, he has Chiron, which is his own personal wound. It's in his communication. He himself, I promise you, this is someone who has felt as though he's not smart enough many times in his life, or has felt kind of like the dumb blonde kind of a thing, because he's got all this kind of slower moving, practical, this earthy energy on his Mercury. The way he thinks is going to be a little bit more plodding, a little more, I guess, to take his time with something. He may have even had learning disabilities as a child, but it's not that he could have had ADD, for example. Aquarius on the cusp of the 3rd house is really, or someone who has Uranus in the 3rd house, like I have that. It gives you, your brain thinks in a different way than other people's brains, and so you get labeled as, having learning disorders, or he could have had dyslexia, things like that. He actually has transiting Neptune conjoining his Chiron right now, so this is the time for him to sort of, if he is working on a project, like let's say he is doing like a documentary, or he's doing something where he's having to use his brain to communicate a message. He is this Neptune is fantastic because it actually sort of dissolves that wound in a sense. It kind of makes it, quiets it. Okay, it kind of makes it go away a little bit. It's sort of like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. It's my mission, so I'm just going to do it. And we're going to go ahead and let the other things go. And he does have Mercury. Solar arc Mercury is at 9 degrees. It's 1 year away from hitting his Chiron. So I promise you in this next year, there's a story of some kind that he has been putting together that he's going to be sharing. So that will be shortly. We shall see. Okay. Now, fourth house, this is, also third house, he's got Pisces in the third house. Pisces is imagination, ruled by his Neptune in the 11th house, traditionally ruled by Jupiter, which is in the fourth house, which is also very imaginative, intuitive placement. So, like, he's going to think in a way that's kind of really visionary and outside of the box, and not everybody's going to understand what he's saying. He's going to feel, when he's younger especially, like people didn't get him and he was misunderstood, and that's why, and it leads us up to his Neptune in the 11th house. Acting is perfect. He could use someone else's words. He could be that person and step into that and be understood. Okay, so that's a big wound for this person, feeling like he's not fully understood for his true voice inside of him. And that sort of artistic creative voice has been his individual true artistic voice, not being an actor, which is somebody else's voice, but his own, has really been needing to get out of him. And I think this is a period of time where he's going to be able to do so. And by that I mean over the course of the next 2 years. Fourth house is the house of home. We've got Pisces on the cusp, 26-degree IC. He does have progressed Venus right there at 27 degrees of Pisces, which is lovely. Pisces on the IC is really nice. Pisces is really spiritual and soulful, and to me, I think that just says that you're going to create home with your soulmates. You know, I think it can be something where home could feel elusive, but to me, it's really great. It's like they've adopted all these kids. It's like they've brought all these soulmates that they've had from, because I do believe in past lives, and it's like they brought all these children into their space that aren't necessarily all their biological children, but they are all from the same soul family. You know, they're all coming together, and that's really beautiful, and like actually gives me goosebumps because I think it's. If you can do family, if you've got family figured out, then you're good. There's nothing in my mind more important than your earthly family and your soul family, like your family, your connections. And he's sort of been blessed in that area. Jupiter in the fourth house as well. That's a benefic. That just says it's also a lot of. And so, of course, they've got a lot of children, big family, and, it squares his Mars too. So it's probably be a little bit exhausting at times, but it also gives him purpose, and it gives him a sense of, these are the people that I'm supposed to protect and take care of and lead and guide. And if you notice that Jupiter makes a square to his south node. So I will guarantee, I will bet my bottom dollar, if there's such a thing as past lives, that those children that he is the parent of, and his wife as well, they are all soulmates. They're all part of, this was not an accident. This was all part of a design, from, long ago or whenever. So also that Jupiter, makes a square, of course, to his south node and his north node and to his Mars. It's just this nice little, he's the benefactor in a sense. He's the one that's here to kind of guide people, to coach them, to lead them, to be like in the home. And I haven't looked at Angelina's chart yet, but I would imagine that the two of them, he's very much the one that has, I know she's dealt with in the past with depression and things. So I guarantee he's the one who's been her rock and has like lifted her up, lifted her spirits, and like pulled her back from the edge. Okay, and that's been just a contract he has with their soul contract. Okay, fifth house is the house of creativity. It's the house of self-expression. He's got Aries there and Taurus. So Aries is ruled by his Mars and Capricorn in the first house. That says this is someone who's here to be a creative. But again, it's in Capricorn. So to me, this is more on that level of planning the big picture, like the visionary creation. He's more to be an architect, of the whole grand design, the whole scheme, not just playing a role. Like that's just a part of his use of his birth chart, okay? Taurus is also in the fifth house, ruled by his Venus, which is in Capricorn, conjunct his moon in the second house. So this is like Venus is, anyone who has Taurus in the fifth house is someone who has an understanding of aesthetics. They understand someone who has a Venus in Taurus, or a Taurus in the fifth house, or just a strong Venus in general, Venus conjunct a luminary, says you seeing something beautiful speaks to your heart. Like they naturally understand harmony, balance, proportion, color, all these things. And also in interpersonal interactions between people, they know when something is beautiful, and even almost these moments that are these stoic moments where there are no words, but it's just this moment. Those would be the things that this birth chart, he would find those things the most beautiful. Those quiet, just moments of life that are perfect and transitory and beautiful, and you want to hold on to them and protect them and cherish them, but you know that they're not, that they're, it's part of the plan, you know, this is time bound. So he's going to cherish those things and he's going to hold on to those. And he's also going to want to recreate those things. Okay. Sixth house, this is the house of, has to do with your habits. It's the Virgo house. It's the house of the servant. He has Taurus there, which is ruled by his Venus conjunct his moons. That tells us he is very much willing to serve the mother. So again, his mother that he grew up with, he probably has a close relationship with her. I have no idea about their relationship. I could be wrong. But also the mother in general, so the mother of his children. Very much someone who values the mother, finds the mother beautiful, the mother archetype, and is willing to serve her, like be her royal subject in a sense, you know, whatever he can do to support her in her role. It's a Capricorn Venus, you know, so it appreciates and values being the father and being the protector and the person who's guiding the family. He's got Gemini there as well in the sixth house. Oh, and also I should say with Taurus, you know, let's say he didn't do the acting. Let's say he just ended up being a father. He would be a really pretty traditional dude, pretty traditional guy, you know. Taurus with that Venus conjunct moon in the second house, I can see him being, you know, as a dad working. His wife could work or not work, but he'd be focused on creating security, material security for his family. Like that would be something that gave him a lot of satisfaction. And so even if he just had his own business or, you know, a job, he, you know, could be actually quite content doing that to a certain extent. I mean, there is this connection to the ninth house where he does have this higher calling. But anyway, he's a pretty conservative guy, is what I'm trying to say. Gemini in the sixth house is that Mercury of his also in Capricorn. When I see Gemini, I always kind of also think of multiples, more than one thing. And I think, isn't Angelina Gemini? Pretty sure she is. I haven't even looked at her chart yet. This is how I do it. I just wing it. Okay, yeah, she's a Gemini. Sun with a Gemini Mercury. And her sun falls, I think, like just into his, oh, that's so sweet. Just into his seventh house. So naturally, he's going to have no problem serving Gemini types, or you know, there's an understanding of what Gemini needs to feel taken care of, I suppose you could say. But Gemini also is more than one. It just kind of suggests he's able to sort of multitask and do a lot of things at once. And in his daily habits, like, man, he could like get up early. Very structured with his daily patterns, by the way, Taurus there, but like get up early, do the gym, do like do a schedule and just get a ton of stuff done in a day, where everyone else would be exhausted by the end of the day. He's going to be tired, but he's like, you know, just how he is. He's a very hard worker. Again, stamina. Seventh house. This is the house of marriage and partnership. It's what the person will marry themselves to. So it's not necessarily literally your marriage. It's not that you're going to necessarily marry a Gemini or a Cancer, okay? He happened to. But it's that you're going to marry yourself to the themes of Gemini or Cancer. Gemini has to do with several things. We've got to look first at the ruler for him. So it's that Mercury in Capricorn. When you think of Gemini, Gemini's opposite is Sagittarius, which is his sun sign, right? Gemini is colorful and sparkly and all over the place and a little scattered, and like they're floating up in the, you know, they're just full of ideas. And I've got so many good friends that are Geminis, and I'm just like, where do you get your energy from? They're just all over the place. They're kind of, I think of them as sort of like a golden retriever with ADD. Like they're just sort of hyper, you know. That's the Gemini. That's Gemini vibe, and it's mainly in their headspace. They get bored easily. Okay, so his relationship itself is going to have that quality. It has to have. He's going to be attracted to a partner like that, and it brings this into his Capricorn because he feels like he can ground them. He feels like he can give them structure. He can help guide them. He can help them sort of figure out what they're doing with themselves, and in turn, it gives him a sense of identity. Okay. So also with his Cancer there, Cancer is, ruled by the moon. And this is tells us also he wants, by the way, I should let you know when it comes to divorces, Gemini's 2, and he was married to what's her face? Aniston. What's her name? Yeah, her. you know, so, and then he had a second marriage, and I don't know if he was even married before Jennifer. He may have been, I have no idea. But Gemini, Aquarius, Sagittarius, all the air signs on the cusp on the 7th house will show multiple marriages, just by the way. A lot of times if you see earth signs on the cusp, you'll see a marriage that's either someone who's in like a long-term marriage or doesn't get married at all. If you see the rulers falling into, if you see Neptune issues in the 7th house, or you see the ruler falling into the 12th house, that person doesn't usually get married till later in life, if they do at all. So just some little things to add to your repertoire. Okay, but in the 7th house, he's got his North Node. It's in Cancer. And so his soul path is family. That's what he's here. He's here to learn about family. He's here to learn about marriage and family. Because through that relationship, it brings us down into his moon, which is in Capricorn. And that moon of his makes that trine up into his 9th house, that midpoint between Pluto, his power, how he's going to kind of transform society, Uranus, and his MC. So it's through his marriage, through his partnership with his wife, that he actually will attain his greatest accomplishments. Not only through the family that he gets to experience, but through his role in the outer world and the role that he's going to sort of be representing. And also even just him teaching his children, you know, it's that as well. Okay, let's see. There's a suggestion too, where your North Node falls, that means that's the area of your life that in the past life that's informing this one, you kind of sucked at. So to me, it looks like he was military. He was military, and perhaps he was but in the higher echelons of the military, someone who was in leadership, and he just was a workaholic and probably was gone from his family all the time. And in this life, he's supposed to be here. He's supposed to be with his family, with his wife, taking them with him. And I don't know if they do that. I would imagine they probably do a bit, because I know they have to travel and have, when you're on a movie set, you're there for a long time. It's grueling hours. So I can imagine he would have a strong desire to bring his family with him, to have them close to him, because he knows in the past he was very selfish. First house, South Node, means he just did what he wanted to do. And it was military. It's truly like he was a leader in the military, and kind of just left his family in the dust. And it's interesting too, because you see him in these military roles like Troy, or it's very convincing, right? He definitely can play that role very well. He can play the stoic masculine quite well, because that's the warrior. The warrior archetype is completely divorced from the Venusian lover archetype. The warrior, think of how Spartans were trained. They had the lover. They beat the lover, the shit of the lover out of that child, right? Like, you didn't have any lover in you. You didn't have Venus in you. You didn't have softness. You couldn't, or you wouldn't be able to be a good warrior. A good warrior is devoid of those attachments, and that's being in the pure, unbalanced, you know, almost shadow side of the masculine in my mind. So this life, he's supposed to learn how to balance those two things, to be masculine, to play the role of the masculine, but also to step into this other role of the family and the partner, and, you know, this home, this role of home, and taking care of his home and showing up for them and being committed, being solid. His divorce from Jennifer, I promise you, I've never looked at her chart. I don't even know her sun sign. I promise you, though, that was a very difficult decision, and he probably had a lot of guilt over, but also a sense he had Neptune, solar arc Neptune. I know it had moved to either conjoin or square his sun at some point, like the 2 years before he met Angelina. So that's probably about when he got married or was with, you know, Jennifer. And that relationship definitely would have had a quality of being a soulmate relationship, but it was Neptune. And see, Neptune makes you not really be able to see clearly who you are. And so sometimes you get into relationships during that solar arc that it's not necessarily the long-term relationship, but it needed to happen, you know? So anyway, okay, I digress. We're at 45 minutes right now. I'm actually doing this birth chart reading a little quicker than I would with a regular birth chart, just because, you know, just to get through this. Now, 8th house is the house of the taboo. Without going into too much explanation, it is the house of sexuality. It's the house of it's a place where we make sacred contracts with other people. So it's that type of sexuality. You know, our 5th house, which is that house of creativity, that's the house of, you know, the one night stand or boyfriends and girlfriends that we know aren't like permanent. That's very 5th house. The 8th house has to do with, this is someone I've come to work through some difficult things with, okay? And usually that's through an intimate sexual relationship. He's got Cancer on the cusp, which brings us again down to his moon in the second house, as well as Leo in the eighth house, which is his sun in the first house. Whenever I see Cancer Leo, it always makes me think of, the mother and the father. So to me, he's supposed to, through that relationship of the mother and the father, learn about sexuality. Like that's truly where he will come to understand the deeper, the deeper lessons he's meant to learn in this life about sexual bonding. And it'll be the place where he's attracted and where he will lean. Okay. In his ninth house, the ninth house is the house of higher education, wisdom, foreign travel, foreign countries. He's got Leo on the cusp, which is his sun in the first house, in Sagittarius. That's a little back and forth. See, Sagittarius is the natural ruler of the ninth house. So travel, learning, history, probably loves war history, I bet, because of Pluto in the ninth house, sort of seeing how cultures and societies have been totally transformed through revolutions or, just archaeology, anthropology, these kinds of things are probably really interesting to him. And, he's got Virgo in the ninth house, and Virgo loves to study. Virgo is it's ruled by his Mercury down in Capricorn, which takes its time and wants to understand something deeply and wants to understand it very accurately. And that's why I'm saying he's got this wound with communication where if in the past he's wanted to perhaps write a screenplay that was historically based, if he's felt a little insecure or worried that he's not going to do it well enough, that's all because of his Capricorn stuff. That's anyone strong Capricorn, strong 10th house, they have these issues where they worry a lot about how things will be received and not wanting to be received less than how they mean to be received. They want to be seen as intelligent and smart and that they've got all their facts correct. Okay. He's actually kind of a nerd. He's kind of great on the inside. He's actually pretty, or sort of, he's just like really pretty conservative and a little bit uptight in a sense. Not as, he's definitely not like a wild child, really. I mean, there's a part of him that is, but who he really is on the deeper inner level is very kind of grown up and mature, I would say. He's got Jupiter right now, see, and also Jupiter is transiting, it was transiting as Pluto. And to me, through that ninth house of his, there's something he's working on right now that it does have to do with, it's going to hit his 10th house, over the course of this next, would it be before, like August or so, it's going to hit his 10th house. So something big, expansive is going to be happening with career for him towards the end of the summer. Okay, now 10th house. Let's just go to the 10th house now. We've got 10th house is career, and it's your public status. So 10th house is it's right up heavens above you, right the moment you're born. It has to do with how you're perceived by the world around you. Is it really who you are? Not necessarily. Interestingly enough, he doesn't have any planets there. It's untenanted, but that doesn't mean anything because he still has rulers. So we see his Virgo. You see Virgo on the 10th house on the MC. That to me is someone who is, all the mutable signs are about seeking meaning. He's looking for meaning in the world around him. Okay, it brings us down into his Mercury that's in Capricorn. This is design too, by the way, which is interesting. I don't know if he's got any interest in design, but Mercury, Capricorn, second house, Taurus, it makes me think of someone who's really good at practical design. Looking at how something's been created and going, oh, nope, that was not designed well. Like there's an ability, like with an actual object to say, this measuring tape is really bendy. That should be fixed. We need to use a different material or different gauge of metal or whatever. I'm not an engineer. That's my brother. But anyway, he would definitely have an ability to be pretty handy, at least, if not actually with his hands-on, actually, but I think he probably is. If not, though, definitely with his mind, with understanding how something is working, an actual object. But it's also systems, looking and going at governments, organizations. That's why I was saying politics is a possibility for him, or something where he's involved in some sort of an organization that has an effect on policy, perhaps, even if it's what he does creatively. Because it does have Libra in his 10th house, which is artistry. That's ruled by Venus. That is art. Venus conjunct the moon in Capricorn. This is a guy that's a designer. How hilarious. So if anything, it's funny, he's an actor. He did the acting thing, which is a small use of his chart. It's like only using part of his chart. To me, he's more like the big picture person. He's supposed to be designing the whole, he's like a visionary. He's supposed to be going, okay, here's the issue we're facing. Here's the solution. This is how we're going to solve it. And then sort of setting out on creating that plan, whether it's through, as I was saying earlier, doing something like a documentary or creating some kind of an organization that is humanitarian. He's got Neptune in the 11th house, which is the compassionate part of himself and the house of the collective. Ultimately, he's here to heal. This is a redemption. This is a very redemptive 11th house. See, it squares at Saturn in the 2nd house. So it's like, that was him doing, that was acting. That was him making money, Saturn, working, Saturn, playing the role, Neptune, for the collective. He's being this actor, right? But that is not why he is here. He's here for a much more humanitarian. He's here to be a redeemer. I know it sounds a little weird, but it's really true. Neptune of his makes a sextile down to his Mercury as his voice. He's here to speak, to tell the story of these people who are, and even of the systems, to say this system is broken. It needs to be dissolved. It needs to be done away with. And it needs to be reborn as this system. Okay, that's governments, organizations, etc., etc. It can even be the entertainment industry. It could be, he's going to be a champion of many causes throughout the course of his life. And I have a feeling he's maybe only just begun, because Neptune unfolds slowly over time. Like, you only get better at it as you get older, because you step into that role of the wise man or the wise woman and the sorcerer. That's when he really will step into his magic, especially with Pluto hitting all this. You better believe he's like stepping into his magic right now. Okay. 12th house, finally, this is the house of the collective unconscious. It's this world of the formless. It's past lives. It's the spirit world. It's the womb. It's the amniotic fluid we're floating around in. In other words, it's kind of the house of the nameless. It's kind of always hard to define the nebulous 12th house. He currently has transiting Mars moving through the 12th house as an activation of his creativity. So he's definitely working on something. It's going to conjoin the transiting Saturn. And then it's going to bump into his 1st house as well, unless it retrogrades. I got to look at the ephemeris. I could be wrong on that. But at any rate, both Saturn and Mars are moving over his ascendant over the course of this next year. And that is a time where he's working on something. He's working on something creative, and he's going to bring it into, when Saturn moves into the 1st house, that's when, here's the work I've been working on privately behind the scenes. Here it is. And then it conjoins with his sun next year around this time. So it's kind of like a life's work, I feel like. He's going to be presenting something that he's very proud of, or something that he takes very seriously, and that he's been kind of waiting to present. I mean, all of last year, the year prior, he had Saturn over his Neptune. And that's a time when Neptune, that was his wife also. Was she sick last year, the year before, the last 2 years? I'm not sure. But Neptune does rule his 4th house of home, but it would have triggered in him at the same time life and death issues, and issues of, why am I here? What am I here to present to the world? So there is some special pet project he's about to release. Promise you. Okay, that's Brad's. I'm going to take a break. I need to drink some more coffee. So I'm looking at Angelina's chart here, and we're going to go over her chart a little bit. If you're following along, then you may want to pull hers up right now to look at with me. So with Angelina, we just read Brad's, and so it's nice to have it fresh in our minds. She's got her sun in Gemini. And Gemini it's funny because when I think of Angelina, I do not think of her sun in Gemini, really. I mean, I knew she was a Gemini, but I remember initially learning that and thinking, that seems so weird. Does not feel like it's correct to me. The only thing about it that does feel right is sort of her build. She's got this tall, lithe, kind of lanky body type. And that feels Gemini to me. And I guess her mouth, she's known for her mouth, and that's very Gemini. In the 11th house, it's like unexpectedly large kind of mouth. So Aquarius, many times, Aquarius and Uranus, when we have aspects to planets, it will give an unexpected sort of physical result. So, and anyway. But Sun in Gemini, there is, with Sun in Gemini, there is kind of a nervous energy with Sun in Gemini. She's got the ruler of Mercury also in Gemini. So that Mercury is very happy to be in Gemini. We're not going anywhere else with that Mercury. There's no other rulers in that. So she does have some highly Gemini qualities, but they're in the 11th house, which is the Aquarius house. So because Gemini is mutable and Aquarius is fixed, to me, the Aquarius, in a sense, overwrites the Gemini, or they're both still present, but you're going to feel the Aquarius side of her perhaps a little bit more strongly than you are the Gemini side. That's just been my experience anecdotally, working with the modalities of the zodiac signs. Her sun in the 11th house. 11th house is the house of the collective. It's the house that has to do with society. Her South Node is there as well. Her South Node is in Gemini in the 11th house. So, in the past, she perhaps had a life where she could have been someone who was involved in some sort of quote unquote storytelling. And let's use this very loosely, okay? But in the 11th house of the collective, or did something where it was, she was involved, she could have been in politics actually in a past life. That's a very good use of Gemini in the 11th house. Actually, she could have been a politician, and that makes perfect sense for her. Now, what she's bringing forward in this life is the air. It's the world of ideas. 11th house is also very visionary, just like with Brad, how his whole stellium in Capricorn all lands in a Saturn and Aquarius. That's very reflective of her Sun and Mercury and South Node being in the 11th house. There's for both of them, their identities very much hinge upon the bigger picture. Like, what are we really doing with our lives? What is the vision here? And if they're, see, Gemini typically, no offense to Geminis, I love Geminis, they're some of my favorite people. But like, as my good Gemini friend just barely was teasing me the other day, he's like, I love when I get some wine in you, because then you're fun and you're not so serious. And I'm like, sorry that this is how I am. I'm like, I love you when you're serious and not so non-serious, like whatever. Gemini has this quality to them where they are they sort of don't take things seriously, or they like to keep things light. They like to keep things fresh. They like to kind of bounce around from thing to thing. And if you get too serious, then they're the ones that are kind of trying to make you laugh many times. Or you can even see, you think of the stereotypical sort of airhead. And again, Geminis, trust me, I'm not saying that Geminis are airheads. I'm saying the archetype of Gemini, as you see it expressed through certain planets, will come off with a lightness, with a non-serious quality to it, okay? Which you can interpret as sparkle or vivacity or youthfulness, playfulness, etc. Or you could just say it can be vapid, it can be a little bit shallow or airheaded. It can be sort of both, okay? So when I think of Angelina Jolie, I do not really think of those things. I think of her more as an Aquarius, if anything. I would think of her more as being sort of nonconformist. She's a little bit, does her own thing, a little bit eccentric, and somebody who really ultimately is interested in those 11th house issues of, I'm going to live my life the way that I need to live my life. Like, I've got to do it in a way that works for me. I mean, didn't she adopt her first child when she wasn't even married, I think, right? I think she's single when she adopted her. Was it Maddox? Is that her first? I don't remember. But anyway, that's from my perusal of magazines at the checkout stand. It's as good as I got. So, but anyway, but that's, living your life. You've got to be individual. You've got to live your life true to who you are. So I do definitely see that for her. And Mercury being there in the 11th house means there's a quality with her Sun and her Mercury of her being kind of floating up above and needing someone to kind of ground her. Even the fact that she's so thin and so light, it sort of reflects her spirit, this kind of detachment from the earth, that physically even, she's almost ethereal. She's got that ethereal quality to her. And it makes perfect sense that she's attracted to a man who has all this earthy energy, who also, though, it's ruled by Aquarius. So he kind of brings her down. He sees her vision, but he also brings her down to ground, helps her shape it, helps her form it, and give it direction. Okay. Okay. Let's look at, again, with hers, I'm not going to do a full, we don't do a full chart reading with her because we're going to do the overlays, and so I'll be able to kind of do it there. I just have to get a feel for what she's got going on. Her Sun is opposite her vertex and opposite her Neptune. I mean, seriously, I have yet to see an actress that doesn't have strong Neptune. Either they're a freaking Pisces moon, they're a Neptune conjunct Sun or moon, or they've got Neptune or Sun or moon in the 12th house, or Neptune in the first house, very strong Neptune. And she's got Neptune trining her moon and her Mars. Neptune trines her Mars exactly. And that to me also, see, Mars is the physical body. She's got a Mars in Aries, which is a very athletic, strong Mars placement. But when you have it trining Neptune, that gives it this quality of being ephemeral and ethereal and like an elf, which is exactly how she's built. She's very waify, very tiny and skinny. It is really, she does have this thing where she's a little bit, can be a little disassociated from her physical being. She could be a little kind of sometimes needing to be pulled down into her body and grounded down into her body. Okay. Her moon is in Aries. Love it. I have the same moon, conjunct Mars, conjunct Jupiter. Moon, this little stellium is in the ninth house. So first and foremost, passionate. Moon in Aries, we are the types who are here to protect those who can't protect themselves. Classic across the board for any moon in Aries, especially she's got her moon in Aries ruled by a Mars in Aries. So she's very much a fighter, a warrior. She's got this fighting spirit inside of her that's really fiery and passionate. It's in the ninth house, though. This is Sagittarius house, which has to do with the world, the realm of wisdom. This is the realm of kind of ideas and ideology. So she's going to fight in that area. She's going to be someone who wants to be, again, a champion. This is the teacher, the guru, the guide. She's someone who's going to want to fight for the ideas that she finds worthy, the causes she finds worthy of fighting for. And of course, we have her moon there, and she's a mother. She's obviously adopted children from foreign countries. That's moon in the ninth house. That's not, it's really cool because that moon makes a connection to her Neptune down in the fifth house. That's the house of children. Those children are soulmates. Those her babies, her kids, all of them. She's meant to mother them. It's conjunct her North Node. They are from a past life. There's something that like, yep, she's on the right path. Okay. This is actually a really pretty interesting chart. I'm trying to touch on a few things here. She's got her Venus in the 12th house. So that's that Neptune, her beauty. Venus conjunct the ascendant is somebody that's naturally beautiful. And it's just anyone who's got Venus, tightly conjunct the ascendant in the 12th house or in the first house, they're beautiful. There's a beauty to them. If they're not physically beautiful, then they have this thing about them that's charismatic and beautiful. They're attractive. And they could even be like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but you would just feel like that is a beautiful person. Okay. They have that quality to them that is charming, and there's a sweetness there. There's a gentleness and a kindness. Her Venus is hidden in her 12th house, which tells me also that she herself does not fully recognize, nor does she fully see her Venus, her beauty, and it's in Cancer, ruled by her moon in Aries. So she may channel, it's kind of funny, this is an interesting one, like her femininity and her beauty. She may use her sexuality actually as a way to sort of access it. And that could be a little bit exhausting. Having a Venus kind of hidden in the 12th house, it's like needing to be validated. And so she may have, she may still use sex as a form of validation for her personal beauty. She's got her moon there too, though. So see, that's also being a nurturer, being someone who is loving others and who's lovable, who's creating home and space that's like fighting for someone. And it makes me think of Laura Croft, actually. Like that role for her, where she's like this fighter, this defender, this champion, would for her make her feel beautiful, right? So I'd be a way for her to access her Venus, and she would enjoy that. She would take really great pleasure in that role of, yes, mothering, but also in this, when we talk about sort of like her persona that she plays in life, it is being this like warrior. That's something she's going to definitely identify with. Okay, now she just fights with this. There's this like battle between the part of her that's really fiery and actually quite strong and masculine, but it's fire, it's not earth, and then the part of her that's kind of detached from this world a little bit. When I talked about cosmic charts, she's got quite a cosmic chart, and her Venus is also square Uranus, so she's very restless when it comes to. It's funny because like being a mother and home, it's what she loves. It's also something that she is very restless with it, and probably is kind of a little all over the place with her mothering and has to just kind of do it her own way. She might take the kids. I know they travel a lot. I mean, I've seen that, but other than that, even with her schedule and stuff, she really would need a lot of kind of freedom and latitude to sort of do what it is that she wants to do when it comes to parenting. She's going to parent in her own way too. That's quite unique, and it's one where. Libra's there on the cusp. That's the partner. It's with the partner, ruled by that Venus in the 12th house. She's kind of just following, like, what am I supposed to do? It's kind of like you're partnering with spirit in a way. You don't really know what you're doing, but you're just like, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to parent these kids, but I'm just going to do it, and it's going to work out fine because I'm supposed to do it. So I'm just going to do it. I guarantee you that's like her parenting motto. It's like, and it could be also one very much of self-sacrifice and one of, a redemption. This is a redeeming thing that we have happening with her chart as well. House of the mother, ruled by a planet that falls in the 12th house of the Redeemer, and it's Venus in Cancer. That's the mother, the beautiful redeeming mother. She's redeeming her own mother, by the way. And I have no idea what her relationship is with her parents, but I'm guessing that her relationship with her mother was absent. And so she is, through her role with her children, now redeeming that initial childhood role that she experienced from her childhood origin. Okay, so like we're seeing someone who's pretty fragile, but also very strong. It's like, interesting. But she's fixing it. It's really pretty cool. Let's just talk about her nodes, and then we're going to go into the synastry. So her north node is in Sagittarius at 0 degrees. Go figure. Brad, of course, what degree is he at? He's like 25 degrees Sagittarius Sun. Just want to look at his, see if he's got any. They've got nodal stuff here. So far, okay, not necessarily. Okay, so remember your node, your north node, south node, the nodal axis. It's in that same zodiac sign for a stretch of time. It's not like it's everybody born your same year. Pretty much, they're going to have your same Sagittarius north node, right? People born in 1975 have a Sagittarius north node. So it's the house placement, and she's got it in the 5th house. Now, what's really interesting about this 5th house is that house of, first and foremost, it's the self and it's creation. But it also rules, so it's creation, that's her artistry that she does with work. But it also rules the pregnant mother, the pregnant woman, and children, because those are creations. And in Sagittarius, that's expansion of something, ruled by Jupiter, which is in her 9th house. That's the first and foremost, it's a lot of kids. If she was asking me, am I gonna have children? I'd be like, yes. And you better have a big house, because the ruler is in the 9th house and it's Jupiter, conjunct the MC. Like that's what you're mainly here to do, is to create family and to bring together these people from your soul family. It's Neptune. She's meant to bring together these people, souls, in this family setting for some way bigger purpose. And it's interesting because Mars is in there as well in her 9th house, and she's supposed to, there's this element of her fighting to make this happen. I don't know how her pregnancies went, if they were difficult. I'm assuming they probably were, that she probably got sick, that she probably had to kind of fight through them, almost like a predator, like throwing this baby inside of you. It was like, made her very sick. Velociraptor coming out. But it had to be that way. It's like she had to fight for it. She had to struggle for the pregnancy, struggle for the birth of her children. And I do know she had, her mastectomy and her ovaries removed, which is also, there are a bunch of things in here that would indicate that. 4th house rules, that's where we would look to see the breasts and the ovaries, the female reproductive organs, the ruler being in the 12th house. That is the house of dissolving something, right? It's also, if she wouldn't have done that, there's a very good chance she would have developed some sort of cancer that would have, because it's hidden. It would have been something hidden inside of her that she wouldn't have known about. So she followed her intuition. I believe that was definitely the right choice. Also, when you look at the fact that Pluto's opposite her moon, Pluto in the 3rd house too, it could have been sort of multiple like sites and issues. She could still have issues, as a matter of fact. So hopefully not. But even her 6th house, her house of health, the ruler is Jupiter, conjunct the MC, conjunct her moon, which is the breast, Mars, which is, it can be sort of like, when you think of Cancer, how it can violently sort of move throughout your body, right? That in Aries, which is blood. So I'm glad she cut them out instead of letting the body kind of go through that process of, she get triggered by one of her solar arcs, then have a Cancer pop up. She may still have it pop up though. Okay, anywho, South Node, so we talked about that. I'm sort of thinking she had perhaps a past life where it could be several things. It could be politics. It could be a South Node in Gemini, ruled by her Mercury in Gemini. It could also be something as simple as she was involved in her community. She could have been someone who, there's an element here of her speaking, of her. Yeah, this does feel like a politician or like a lawyer or someone who's fighting, an activist of some kind. That Mercury is also making a trine down to Uranus in the 4th house. So this is sort of like freeing, maybe even being like an immigration lawyer. I know it's like way out there. I'm saying this is like not a super ancient past life. I feel like this is her being around during like Ellis Island days and being some sort of like a person who helps reunite families, or there's something, an element of commerce here, so transportation, moving people, an element of being a mouthpiece, an element, it comes down to the fourth house of home, Uranus, which is like the collective, sort of makes me feel like, she herself actually may have been, she may herself have actually been separated from her family as well. So there's kind of like several lives on top of each other here. Been separated from her family because that Uranus unexpectedly in the fourth house, then brought forward to a different life where she actually was someone who helped reunite people, bring them back together, whether it was legally, like to me it feels like she was a politician or a lawyer or somebody who had a position of power of some kind, in the public sphere, because her son makes a trine to Pluto. I mean, in the third house, that's the house of the voice. And so her voice had, to me, in my mind, it had the ability to affect change of some kind. So you can play around with that nodal axis if you like. All right, we're going to stop now, and then we're going to put them together in their little synastry chart. Okay. Also, I forgot, I'm going to take a little peek at Angelina's sort of her solar arcs, just very quickly see what's going on, because I saw a few things happening. She's got Mercury, solar arc Mercury, as of 2 years ago, so 2014. It was conjunct her ascendant, and it was prior to that conjunct, actually at the same time, it's 28 degrees, conjunct her Venus. And Mercury, let's see, for her, Mercury rules, where is it? Rules her south node, her sun, her Mercury. It rules her 12th house as well. This is one where she could have had sort of a change in her approach to life, the way she was looking at her worldview, and coming from a much more spiritual place. And it's also a time of, because it's 12th house stuff, conjunct the Venus, it's not surprising that she had surgery. Venus is her beauty as a woman, her identity as a female in Cancer. That's the mother, that's the breasts. So that she had surgery is not too surprising. Curious to see what else is kind of going on with her, especially because Brad has so much stuff happening. So she's got her progressed moon. It's currently at 17 degrees of Libra. It's conjunct her IC. Progressed moon, as it's moving through the fourth house, it's a time where it's kind of one where we are introverting in a sense, or hermiting, or we're very much focusing on family. And I feel like, what else has it got going on with it though? Okay, it's squaring her Saturn. So her Cancer, Saturn, she may be having a little bit of a tough go right now. Their marriage may be experiencing a bit of a struggle. Saturn rules her Cancer, or her Capricorn 7th house, and it's in her 12th house. And that's having Saturn in your 12th house means marriage for you. It's either people who have this, they either don't get married. I've seen this with several clients, or they get married later in life. Or when they do get married, they realize it's going to be, there's a level of commitment and seriousness that they realize that marriage is going to entail. And so many times they'll sort of wait. They just won't do it because they're worried. Those fears that are hidden in the 12th house are what are informing their idea of what marriage is. Because her Saturn makes an exact square to Jupiter in the 9th house, that adds a nice element of, it's not going to be so bad. It adds optimism. This is also 9th house. So it's like for a purpose. It's for a reason. Marriage it's going to be hard. It's going to be challenging, but it's also going to be a place where we grow and where we are able to find meaning. Because she married someone who is strongly Capricorn and strongly Sagittarius, that makes perfect sense. She's Saturn, Jupiter, those are informing her 7th house. So, and, she's got Aquarius in her 7th house, and her husband's whole stellium, ends up with that Sagittarius in Aquarius. So, Saturn and Aquarius. So you can see that there's a natural attraction there between the two of them. They both have this interest they're visionary. They're very interested in meaning in the world around them, affecting change in the world around them. And they're both very interested in also commitment, like working through things that are difficult. I do think right now she is very possibly going through a little bit of a depression, and she will have her moon move into position, her progressed moon. It's going to conjoin her natal Uranus, over the course of this next year. It'll be like next year. Well, I don't know, 9-10 months or so. And when that happens, it could be a little crazy making time. She could feel a little, at that period in time, her home life could be a little up in the air. Emotionally, she could feel a little, I don't know if she's bipolar or had those issues, but that could be a time where that triggers issues of bipolar. Her moon will also at the same time be squaring her Venus. And so it could be a time where, I don't know. I hope she doesn't have like a hidden love affair or something. There could be something sort of hidden that pops out of the woodwork over the course of this next year or so with her. But I don't think it's like a love affair. Maybe she's going to go get her breasts redone or something. That actually wouldn't. That's possible. Maybe get some plastic surgery. Yeah, she's got Mars. Mars will be moving into her 6th house. Saturn also towards this next year will be in her 6th house. That's possible. She might do something like that. She might be she's got Saturn right now in her 5th house, which is a time where with our love life, we can feel a little bit discouraged, and not just our love life, but our lovability and our creativity. We can be very productive with our creativity, like working on projects, working really hard on creating things. She's got Saturn conjunct her natal Neptune. So that's definitely a time where she's focusing on making the dream a reality. But it can also be a time where it's hard. It's Saturn, and it's hard work. And it's, you're dealing with a lot of issues of facing the reality of things, and it's not always pretty. And that Saturn is currently, going back and forth over as an opposition to her sun. So it's a time where even your identity is a little bit being retooled. You can feel tired. Having both the progressed moon making a square to her natal Saturn and the and the transiting Saturn opposing her sun. This is definitely, she's tired right now. She's tired physically and maybe feeling a little bit old. Just like it's those times when you go, oh, that's right, I'm not going to live forever. Like life is not, but at the same time, it can also focus us on taking better care of ourselves. And Saturn will be moving into her 6th house. So I do think she's going to have some sort of, perhaps next year about around the same time, she may have, whether it's elective surgery or it's something with her health, where she, what's going on with her Jupiter? Let's see if her Jupiter's got anything crazy happening to it. It will in 2 years by Pluto. So there's something a good chance she will have some sort of perhaps reconstructive surgery over the course of the next 2 years. She may have another, wouldn't be surprised if she actually had another surgery relative to her cancer stuff. Okay, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Okay, let's focus on just seeing if there's anything else important, just kind of with a quick scan of the eye. I'm sure I'll miss things because this isn't a forecast. I'm just kind of curious. Okay, we will say this. Her south node, which is at 0 degrees of Gemini, she does have her solar arc MC, Jupiter, moving into position and it'll be over the course of the next 4 years, to conjoin with that south node. So this is a time when those past life things that she is bringing forward will be out in the limelight. And Jupiter, she's receiving some recognition for these things. If she steps into, again, policy change, policy reform, so not necessarily politics maybe, but it's something she's going to be being heard. And it's MC, which is her career, but to me, I feel like the acting is great, but it's this bigger thing. So there's a good chance that maybe the two of them are, like I said, working on a project together. If we look at the descendant in her chart, it's ruled by that Saturn of hers at 17 degrees. Let's see if it's got anything happening to it. Yeah, in 2 years, Pluto. So in 2 years, the solar arc Pluto will be making a trine to it. It's funny because a lot of astrologers don't use trines or sextiles when they talk about solar arcs. And I'm going, why not? I went through all of my past, like when I got pregnant, my marriage, love relationships, trines and sextiles were totally active from my solar arcs. So in my opinion, I love the harder angles, but I would definitely not dismiss the easier aspects, rather, not angles, aspects, because just from the things I've seen, they're just as effective. So it does look like there is some sort of a transformative, Pluto will be making, solar arc Pluto, it's at 15 degrees of Scorpio, will be making a trine to her Saturn. And it's in her 4th house. So I mean, that to me does have something to do with home, with her family life, and with her as a female, it would have to do with her physical body, making a trine to Saturn, which rules her house of relationships. It could even just be their relationship having a bit of a rough patch, and there could be a little bit of a rupture for them, a little period of time where they are apart from each other. Could be because of work, not necessarily because they are, getting a divorce, but maybe they're forced to sort of be separated from each other. But yeah. Okay, let's go on to the synastry for realsies this time.